This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. Welcome to A Life in Film. I'm Elliot James Langridge. I'm an actor, writer, and apparently a podcaster, and I love film. This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story? Previous guests include Toby Jones, Sam Clement, Natalie Emmanuel, Andrea Riseborough, and Tony Curran, to name a few. Our guest today is a British writer and director who's dipped his toe into some of the biggest shows on TV, including Lost in Space, Hannibal, Black Sails, Westworld, and he even snagged an Emmy nomination for Game of Thrones. In terms of movies, he recently took on the huge budget Hellboy, but you may know him best for Dog Soldiers or horror classic The Descent. Our guest today is writer-director Neil Marshall.
It's a life in film. 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 Woo!
Hey Neil, how's it going?
All right, how's it going with you?
Yeah, good. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, man. I'm a big fan, and it's just amazing when people like you take the time to just chat about your movies and stuff. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries.
All
No
good.
worries at all.
Right, let's get started then. I'll go straight in and just ask how it all started for you. Like, what was the kind of the interest in film? How did that come about? Was that your parents into movies? Did you watch a lot as a kid? How did it start?
Yeah, my parents are definitely into movies. My mum and dad. My dad specifically kind of was into westerns and war movies and stuff like that. But I remember, like, from my earliest memories, of like watching movies and stuff on TV a lot. And sometimes they'd have like a babysitter in because mum and dad would be off going to the cinema because they like to go to the cinema quite a bit. So, and then at a certain point, we came of age to go to the cinema with them, which was great, and start going to see films there. I think the first film that I saw at the cinema was Mary Poppins, probably on some kind of re-release or something like that.
I was going to say, I feel like you're not old enough.
Like that. I mean, it was definitely on a re-release or something like that, because like shortly after that, I was going to see A Bridge Too Far, Spy Who Loved Me, and then Star Wars and stuff like that. So, 70s cinema at its greatest. I was too young to see Jaws at the cinema, but Star Wars was okay. So yeah, there was that side of things, and then like I distinctly, one of my earliest memories as well is my dad kind of waking me up in the middle of the night. I must have been like 5, and like he came in, he woke me up, and he said, come with me," and I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" And he took me into the lounge, and on TV there was, I'm fairly certain it was The Bride of Frankenstein, but it might have been Frankenstein, I'm not sure, but it was one of those two. And there's one of these black and white classics that was playing on like BBC Two at 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And he said, I think you'll like this. And I just sat there like completely like sucked into it, of both terrified and entranced, in equal measure, of the beauty and how scary it was and stuff like that. It didn't give me nightmares. It just fascinated me, and from then on, I became obsessed with like monsters. It's like, so any books. Like my uncle had this book, and it's a classic, the Encyclopedia of Horror or something like that. So I used to, every time I was around there, I used to like look at all the pictures and read through that. And then because I come from a family of artists, they all used to draw monsters and stuff for me. Just used to conjure up these creatures and draw them down. So yeah, I just got completely obsessed with like monsters and horror from there.
Oh, that makes, I mean, some people's early story doesn't really connect to how they've become a filmmaker and everything else, but that really makes sense. Because
Yeah,
obviously a
it
lot of
does.
your films are, that feels like it came from that for sure.
For sure, and it certainly developed a passion for watching movies at that point. I had an interest in movies. Seeing Star Wars in the cinema was, kind of some kind of transcendental experience of like just it was an epiphany, and that made me fall in love with going to the cinema to see movies, to see what was possible in the cinema. But it wasn't until 1981 when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time, which is this poster behind me. Um, Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time and saw the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark on television. And they kind
Oh
of there
wow.
was this fantastic making of Raiders documentary that they put it out to roughly the same time to promote the movie, and I'd seen that, and that allowed me to kind of put the two things together of like, oh well, this makes that, for the first
Mm-hmm.
time. Like I understand the process, and at that point I was like, I have to do that. That's what I have to do. Um, so yeah, so I was 11 then, and that just set my career path in motion. Then that was it.
That's
Never
amazing
looked
that
back.
they did a behind the scenes even back then. I feel like you think of like even now it's kind of DVDs and things like that aren't as popular as they once were. They had all the behind the scenes and everything else. But to think
Yeah.
back to 1981, then putting that on TV, that's pretty cool to have that.
Well,
Um,
I think Spielberg and Lucas were pretty savvy to that kind of stuff. That there had been, I mean, years before that, there's stuff about the making of Cleopatra and stuff like behind the scenes stuff, which is like little snippets and things like that. And I know, Lucas had done a making of Star Wars, which was on TV as well. But what Spielberg did was he hired a documentary filmmaker to basically come throughout the whole shoot and document the whole thing. So there's hours and
mm,
hours and hours of this footage. And they made this, it was like an hour-long piece or whatever as an accompanying thing. It got nominated for several awards and things like that for
oh
that year
wow.
for documentary. And I think that changed quite a lot. Then from that point on, making ofs became quite a thing on TV. The making of Aliens and the making of this, the making of that, and it was fascinating to watch. And then of course that translated into video extras or DVD extras, which was like for us geeks that peak of like the DVD commentaries and extras and stuff like that when it was at their best was like just
Yeah.
totally heaven. And I mean now it still exists to a degree. There are, the Blu-ray market has become a very much a collector's market more than anything. But the studios and such like aren't so bothered about doing that kind of thing anymore.
Yeah.
They do these kind of token, what the EPK things, where
Mhm.
they do like a 2-minute snippet of like behind the scenes, but they don't go into any real depth about the making of the movie. So I love stuff like have you seen Full Tilt Boogie?
No, I haven't.
Well, watch Full Tilt Boogie. It's a feature-length documentary about the making of From Dusk Till Dawn. It's
Ah,
great.
nice.
And these kind of movies like Hearts of Darkness, which is another
Yeah,
great one
Heart of
about
Darkness is
how
mental.
incredible documentaries about the making of a movie, which are
Mm.
just awesome to watch if you're into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Have you seen the making of what's it called? Doctor the one that was just absolutely mad with Val Kilmer in it. I've forgotten the name of it. Doctor
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Island of Dr. Moreau. Yes,
that's it. Have you seen the
yes,
making of that?
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
that's just yeah, great. I love that kind of stuff. It's fascinating.
No, it's nuts. There's some of the stuff that goes on.
It's a shame. It's a shame in a way. I think it would be a great thing for someone like Netflix or Amazon to kind of reintroduce that. Like if you had a movie that you click on and then it's got extras that you can watch on a platform like Netflix or Amazon, that would be amazing. And I'm not sure why they don't do it. I guess it's just more work and more
But
time. But
Netflix does have a show called The Movies That Made Me,
oh yeah,
and
brilliant.
it goes into sort of depth about the making of a certain film. It's done with like kind of a weird sort of comedy slant to it, which is odd,
Yeah.
but they're usually pretty good in the detail that they uncover and stuff like that. But yeah, and they
Ah
did like
yeah.
3 seasons of that. I don't know if they're going to do another one, but there's some good stuff. There's a great Die Hard There's a great one about Die Hard
Yeah, I've
and some
seen
other
that one.
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the Home Alone one was good as well.
Home Alone
Um,
one's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
that it was great. There's been a bit of a gap. I presume that maybe over the pandemic they weren't, because I remember they were coming out around that time and it was really, really good, and then there hasn't been much since, but I'm sure they'll do another season. It was really interesting.
Oh,
But as you say,
yeah, I hope
bit
so.
strange, the comedy
The
slant.
voiceover sort of, yeah, the
Yeah,
voiceover sort of like takes the piss a bit, and it's like,
yeah.
yeah,
A little bit
okay,
odd.
but I can live with it because they're good documentaries. So I'll happy days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really enjoy your Instagram where you post, what you're watching and everything else and all the, and I have to say, maybe we have very similar taste in films, but some of the bangers you're watching, like The Fugitive, Air Force One, a lot of Harrison Ford films I've noticed, Point Break. What I mean, you're obviously a fan of Harrison Ford, and did that, I guess that came from seeing Raiders at a young age. Um, what I want to ask you, I did see your post about it, but the new Indiana Jones, I went to see it the other night, and talk about hyped. I mean, I was so pumped for that movie, and I actually really enjoyed it. I know a few people have had issues with it, but I just really loved it, and I got the feeling that you enjoyed it as well.
I did. I mean, I have some bugbears about it, but it's kind of bugbears that I have about a lot of movies these days. That was just it's the overuse of CG and
Yeah.
treating stuff so much that it, even if it was real, it looks fake, and
Mm.
it's kind of like, you know. But and when you compare that to like the original trilogy, when like pretty much everything was shot in camera, and how dirty and gritty and dusty Raiders is compared to sort of the new one, and how polished that looks, and that frustrates me a little bit because I love that kind of
Yeah.
slightly raw edge to those movies. But that's just, it's the nature of the business now. But on the
Mm.
whole, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mhm.
You have to like, just park your expectations at the door a little bit because it is an Indiana Jones film. We kind of, maybe because we were younger, but we embraced some of the more outrageous concepts in earlier films.
Yeah, true.
So why would we, because we've grown old and cynical now, and we're kind of like, well, it goes too far, at the end, and it's like I was worried about it, but I kind of thought it earned it. It set it up nicely and it delivered.
Mm.
It was just a really fun experience,
Mhm.
and mainly it's just fun to see Ford in that role again.
So good.
See, because no matter what, even in something like even in Crystal Skull, which I didn't like much at all, he was still great as Indy. I mean, he is
Yeah.
Indy, he will be Indy, and he gives it his all in this movie, and I think it's a great performance, and it's a great send off for the character.
Mm.
Yeah, it's gonna have its detractors, but what can you do about that?
It's talking of behind the scenes, I watched a little behind the scenes thing on it the other day, and I was, as you said a moment ago, surprised by how much of it was actually done practically, because they showed a load of clips. I thought that in the film, I thought that was all CGI. So it is a bit weird how you watch that and you go, oh, that was done for real, but there must have been a lot of other things going on in the background that they added on, which just made it look not real.
Yeah,
So it's a bit weird.
it's like they've shot it for real and put it through some fancy computer filter that makes everything look glossy and shiny and adds
Yeah,
sunsets in the background of every shot, kind of thing. And it's kind of like, well, you're losing the edge of it by doing that.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that bugged me about it was that it didn't feel like a stunt movie.
Mm.
Like, because you think about some of the incredible stunts in the first three movies, all the dragging under the truck and the stuff like that. And even the third film, when he like jumps from the horse onto the tank, is like incredible
Yeah.
stunt work. And it's all there. It's all like, step back, take a look at this guy. He just jumps from a horse onto a tank. Like, holy shit, that's amazing. There's nothing like that in the new film. And I get that he's 81 or whatever it is, so like he's not going to be doing that anymore. But even if you're faking it, you'd have a stuntman do something like that, just
Mm.
like the old days, stunt people doing this kind of stuff. Maybe they just didn't want to stretch the plausibility of what a guy like that is capable of. Fair enough, but maybe some of the other characters could have done an amazing stunt. I don't know. I just
Mm.
felt like it was a bit stunt light for an Indiana Jones film. But
Yeah.
on the whole, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's like it was, especially I really like the opening sequence. I could get past the whole uncanny valley thing, because it was just a pleasure to see Indy back in 1944 bashing the shit out of Nazis and stuff like that. Was great.
Yeah, brilliant. It's one of those things that before you go in, there's a lot of expectation, and I'd heard the reviews beforehand, so I was like, okay, keep an open mind for the end as well. I won't say what happens, for the audience that might not have seen it, but I wasn't mad at that, to be honest. I thought it was mental, but done in a way, as you say, I think it was earned, and at least they kind of did something that people are going to be either hate it or love it. They did something that was interesting. And I thought they rounded it off nicely, and I really enjoyed the end, and I thought, it's a nice send-off, a better send-off than the Crystal Skull for sure.
Definitely a better send-off than the Crystal Skull. I thought the last scene was lovely. That really kind of touched me. The last scene. Yeah, as I say, I think it's earned. I mean, some people forget that, in Last Crusade, there's an 800-year-old Crusader knight shows up at the end of the film, and it's kind of treated quite kind of like, oh, there's a Crusader knight, okay, and we weren't too bothered about that. So it's okay, if that kind of stuff can happen in the universe, then anything's possible.
Exactly.
So.
Anyway, we'll get back to you now. Just gone off and had a proper geek out over Indiana Jones, but so when you obviously having the childhood that you had and being surrounded by film, then the choice to go to film school in Newcastle. What was that experience like? Was it kind of what you expected it to be, or what was your experience there?
I don't really know what to expect, to be honest. I mean, even at that time, as far as I could tell, like the movie business in London was a long way away, and the movie business in Hollywood might as well have been on the moon for all I thought I was accessible to it. I don't quite know what my aspirations were back then, but it was just the opportunity to get on a course that had equipment and had the means to try and make stuff, and work with some other people who wanted to do the same kind of stuff. That was the thinking, was like to be with some like-minded individuals, and sort of there was like 30 in my year, I think there was. So like a spread over 3 years, there was like 90 people on the course at any one time. And the theory is that they were all like passionate filmmakers, and as it turns out, an awful lot of them weren't really, but so not many of them are not many of them actually remained in the industry at all for many reasons, I guess. But everybody went their separate ways. But I stuck it out because it was all I could think of, was like, this is what I have to do, and this is all I'm gonna do somehow. Ultimately, that's kind of, if you want to succeed in the industry, that's kind of the way you've got to be. You've got to be so focused on that's it, at the cost of all of the things to a large degree. So I got on there. It was access. I actually, when I applied to it, the only place that was available to me was on the animation course. So I started out the first year just doing animation, which was okay, but ultimately just too slow for me. I haven't got the patience for doing animation that way. I did a bunch of projects, but it was okay. But I used it as an opportunity to get on the course, and then as soon as I could, I moved over to doing live action stuff. And the main thing was like, so the great thing to do on the course was you start out doing crew work on the final year students' final films. They use the earlier years to be their crew. So I always said that is the best education you're going to get anyway. Is not sitting in a classroom learning about it, but being on set, doing it, seeing how it works, seeing the problems that you encounter, figuring out those problems, all that kind of stuff. And that's way more of an education, practical experience. You can't beat it in the industry. So I was doing that. I was doing crewing work on stuff until I eventually got to my final year, and then I had to make my graduation movie. And on there, it was like I just took advantage of the fact that, so they had some film cameras. Most of the students' final films were shot on 16mm. They had a couple of film cameras, but they also had this U-matic video camera, and nobody wanted to use that. And because I wanted to make something a bit more ambitious and needed more time with the cameras, I thought, to hell with it, I'll shoot digital, because then I mean it's like nobody's fighting over the camera. I'll get the camera for weeks if I want it, and I can shoot as much as I want. So, and I was doing this. It was a zombie movie. I did a zombie movie called Brain Dead, or Brain Death. Sorry, not Peter Jackson did Brain Dead. I did Brain Death. This is before Peter Jackson did Brain Death, actually. It was a zombie action movie comedy, full of gore and shoot ups and stuff like that. And it was about 20 minutes long. And we shot it. We actually shot it in the department at night. We used to sneak into the department. We bribed the caretaker to let us come into the department at night, and we just spent all night shooting in the whole department because it's the only location we could have. So so we did that, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun. I had friends who were into makeup effects, who were wanting to try gore and makeup effects and tricks like that. And I did some miniature effects for it. I built like a miniature of this building, which we then kind of blew up at the end. Nice. And it was just crazy stuff like that. We did action shootouts and all sorts of things.
Is that available anywhere? Can that be watched, or is it long gone now? Is there somewhere it's online or anything?
No, it was released on, what was it? It was like a Dog Soldiers release or something like that. One of the Blu-rays or DVDs or something has it on there, I think. I did a commentary for it, so it's on there somewhere. Yeah. It is around. I mean, it's wonderfully cheesy and terrible.
Yeah, but that's great though. I'd love to see it, because it's the beginning.
It's a fascinating kind of curiosity. What was fun about it was that everybody else on my course was doing this kind of very kind of serious, sort of artsy, black and white, somewhat pretentious little films, and the tutors on the course, with the exception of one wonderful guy called John Adams, who was the only one who could kind of see the worth in what I was doing, and got behind it. And everybody else was like turning their noses up at it, like, this isn't real filmmaking, this is just stupid. And then we did a screening at the Tyneside Cinema in Newcastle, which I've just heard is like under threat of closure now, which is so fucking disastrous, because it's an amazing art house cinema. It's been going for so many years. It's where I saw Reservoir Dogs and Evil Dead and stuff like that for the first time. All these amazing movies for the first time. Anyway, so we hired that place for a night, and we had a night of screening of all of our films back to back, and thankfully, like, mine played to like the house went wild, like just people clapping and cheering and having a good time with it after all these sort of very serious films. And I even, like, just to piss the tutors off, I put like a fake trailer for a sequel at the end credits.
So, amazing.
But it brought the house down, and it was like hearing that response to the gore and the horror and the action and stuff like that from an audience for the first time was so rewarding as a filmmaker. As a horror filmmaker, you kind of like, that's what you want. You want the gasps and the screams and the people like going, "Oh, that's disgusting," and stuff like that throughout the movie. So that was really quite rewarding. And then that actually led me to meet a couple of filmmakers who came along, local filmmakers who came along, who then offered me some editing work. And that was like the first kind of job offer that I got, really, was doing some editing work for them. And so it kind of went.
Yeah. I mean, looking at your I mean, the films you've done, I'm a big fan of a lot of the things you've done. But at the beginning there, going from doing, a couple of short films, training, and then making your first movie, you've written and directed a lot of your own things. So what was the process? I'm really intrigued by getting that first project off the ground, like Dog Soldiers, writing that and then making it. How did that happen? Was it like, I need to write a script to get something to actually be able to direct something? What was the process?
Well, I mean, I'd started writing scripts as a teenager, just churning out, really. I'd read Adventures in the Screen Trade by William Goldman, which is like, it's the Bible for screenwriters. You should definitely read it.
What's it called again?
Adventures in the Screen Trade.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I'm attempting to get a film made at the moment, but I'll need to read that then.
But it's primarily about the writing process, and it's by William Goldman, and he wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and some
Fair play.
amazing films. And I kind of read that, and I thought, well, fuck it, I'll have a go at writing some scripts. And I did that when I was a teenager, and I did a bunch of really bad scripts, but it was a learning process. You just do it and do it and do it. Off the back of film school, I was managing to pay the rent with some editing work, local editing work, doing crappy corporate videos and news items and boring stuff like that for local television. But always I was trying to direct, and any opportunity I got to do a little short film or a little piece there for TV or something like that, I would try to direct that. And then in 1995, so I was 25, 1995, these filmmakers that were hired me to do editing work, we'd all kind of sat down and said, what we really want to do is a feature, don't we? So let's figure out a way to do a feature film. And so the director is a guy called Barrett Naluri. He's gone on to do a lot of films and television and stuff like that. He's quite successful. And a producer called Richard Johns. And so they set up this production whereby literally it was all like deferred payment thing, where we all worked essentially for free. But we all just did it because we wanted to do a feature film. Myself and a couple of friends wrote the script. I ended up co-writing. I was like, I storyboarded the film. I was the action coordinator. I was kind of on set every day just as a sort of a backup plan in case, as it turned out, the director, we were working such long hours and such hard work. It was the director passed out one day, and I stepped in and directed for half a day until he got back on his feet again. Nice. And then I edited the movie as well. And so it was an incredible learning experience, just doing this thing where like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong along the way somewhere. I mean, nobody died, so it wasn't like that. But people did, like people got mugged and stuff like that, like going off for food in the middle of the night, like they would get mugged and things. And we had Armourer's vehicle got broken into, and we had the police show up. We had a riot on one of the sets, like literally, like we were filming in this really dodgy location, and all these kids came along and started throwing stones at us and trying to steal the gear off the grips and lighting trucks, and threatening everybody. And the gang just like got bigger and bigger and bigger until we had to evacuate the set, and we literally just like had to pick everything up and get the fuck out of there because we were going to get mobbed. Just insane stuff like this is going on, but like what a learning experience, what an adventure it was. And myself and the line producer, the production manager, sorry, a guy called Keith Bell, who had been in the year below me in film school, and we'd formed a friendship then because we were into the same kind of movies. We were sitting around set watching this chaos ensue and saying, I think we can do better than this. I think we can do a film. I'll produce, you direct. Everybody gets paid, and it's not chaos. I think there's a way of doing this. And that was the birth of Dog Soldiers. And that was, at some point after that, I'd come up with the concept of like, well, what about soldiers versus werewolves? And he was like, fucking love it. Let's do it. And he was working up in Glasgow at the time for an animation company. I went up there and we had a very drunken weekend in Glasgow. And at some point, we wrote out on a little napkin in a pub on the shores of Loch Fyne, drinking whiskey. We wrote out a little contract that said that we'll make Dog Soldiers, he'll produce, I'll direct, and then we both signed it. And then it was kind of the beginning of the journey, and I basically continued to write the script from then on, and we were trying to raise the money. Now, if you told me then it was going to take 6 years, I don't know what I would have. I don't know quite how I would have felt about it, but as it as it turned out, it did take 6 years. And there was a lot of stops and starts. There was a lot of false starts, actually, where there was a couple of times when it looked like it was going to happen. Like at one point, we were going to film it on the Isle of Man. And so we got a producer on board, Christopher Figg, who'd done Hellraiser during the 80s. So like the other previous great British horror movie. And so he came on board. We got a sales company on board. And things started to fall into place, but it was a question of finding money and this, that, the other. And so anyway, we went to the Isle of Man to scout locations there because there's a sort of tax incentive to go there. And then for whatever reason that fell through. And then we were looking at Canada, and then that fell through. And then eventually, and this was like 5 years later, something like that, the sales company went to a thing called the AFM, the American Film Market in Los Angeles. It happens every year around about November. And they set up their little booth thing, because all the salespeople have a booth to sell their product. And in their booth was their script for Dog Soldiers. It was a painting of a werewolf and a little maquette that our makeup effects guys had built, this incredible maquette of the werewolf. And that was sitting on the desk as well. And this guy happened to walk past the stand, this guy called David E. Allen. And he is, I've told the story so many times, but so he's a spinach magnate from Arkansas. Like, his family made their fortune in canned spinach. Popeye's canned spinach.
You can't write
yeah,
it. That's mad.
and he'd inherited his dad's business or whatever, and but he also had a sideline passion for horror movies and like Mario Bava movies and stuff like that, and he always wanted to make a movie and make a werewolf movie, and he saw the maquette and everything, and he got interested, and it basically like took it from there. Like, he said, I want to make this movie. And so he came on board, and essentially he didn't entirely finance it, but he mostly financed it. The rest of the money came from the Luxembourg Film Fund, and that's why we ended up shooting the movie over in Luxembourg. And so that finally came together, and that was like 6 years after the first draft was written, that we made it.
It's always a
but
longer story than you think. Like, people always think a film's just made, in a couple of years or whatever. It's always longer than you think. Wow, that's mad. I did because I'm an actor now, and I did a film called Northern Soul with Elaine Constantine, and she took 12 years to get her film made. And that was, people think that it's like an overnight success, and then you're like, no. Even I was attached to the film when I was 19. We didn't shoot it until I was 25, and by then she'd already written it. 6 years before that. It's kind of like that mad thing of just, it takes forever, doesn't it? And especially with films, low budget British movies like this. What was that like, going onto the set and then suddenly directing a full-length feature film? Was the pressure, did it feel very different from the things you'd done before that, or was it kind of like in your stride?
I was definitely nervous the first day, going on to set the first day, of like, okay, here we go. Now, this is what I've wanted for 6 years. Now, being given this chance that I've got to can do a good job. But I think almost immediately I just felt right at home. I was like, this is where I was meant to be. This is what I was meant to be doing, and it feels good. And it kind of fell into place from there, definitely.
I mean, for a debut feature film, it's incredible.
Well, I mean, part of the problem was, and part of the 6 year problem was that because we went around like all the possible sources of finance in the UK to make this movie, and like they all categorically said one of two things: it's not our cup of tea, as in we don't do horror films here in the UK, because it's not like we're famous for Hammer Films or anything like that. It's like no, we don't do horror films. At that point, it was all Merchant Ivory and stuff like that. So that was one answer. The other answer was, it's way too ambitious for a first movie. It's way too ambitious. It's too big, and so that was the thing. And so that a lot of the rejections that we got were because of that. But and I think anybody who's trying to make a first film that is ambitious is going to encounter that. But like, who wants to make something that isn't ambitious? It's like
100%. You had a great cast as well. Was the strength of the cast, was that based on how good the script was, do you think? How did you get those people involved? Was that kind of just a usual casting process, or how did that work?
Again, it was kind of a long-winded process. I mean, I've told this story before, so it's not a big secret. But like, so a couple of years before we actually made it, we actually had Jason Statham attached to it. So I'd just seen Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and immediately I said, that guy's going to be a star.
Yeah.
We should get that guy. And we met up with him. He read the script and he loved it, and he basically signed up to play the role of Cooper. And
wow.
And he stuck around for a while we were trying to get the money. And then he got an offer from the States to go and do Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. And he would, he was very, he was very open and apologetic about the whole thing. But I said to him, I said, look, we haven't got the money yet. This is John Carpenter, man. It's like, go and work with John Carpenter. And then so he went off to the States, and he made that movie, and everything changed from there on. I think it was after that he did the Transporter or something like that. But it was like, boom, he was off, and my prediction came true, but not in my movie. But and then we got into an auditions process. The first one to come on board was Sean Pertwee. He was attached very early on, and basically said, look, if using my name helps get you anything, use my name, and give me a call when you've got the money. And we did that. We said Sean's attached. It helped us enormously. And then when we were ready, we said, Sean, we got the money, and he was like, right, I'm there. And just fiercely loyal. And that's Sean all over. So he was there, and I think having him attached really helped draw in other people as well. The chance to work with Sean, he very much became the embodiment of the Sarge. That everybody looked up to him, and he was the leader of that group. And so we were casting. We were doing a lot of castings and auditions. I auditioned Simon Pegg for the role of Spoon, and offered him the role because I'd seen him in like Big Train and stuff like that, and was like, again, that guy's going to be a movie star. And so it was that. But the trouble was, as he said, I'm so grateful and so honored, but I promised Edgar that Shaun of the Dead would be my first feature, and he stuck by that promise and did Shaun of the Dead like the year later. So it was like we lost out on that, but instead we got Darren Morfitt, who came in and just absolutely embodied that role so perfectly. That was just phenomenal. And and then we cast a lot of the others, auditions, various other things, people that we knew, like Craig Conway and Les Simpson and stuff like that in it, and Emma Cleesby, people that I knew already. And then finally, the last one to get cast, we were like really struggling as to who was going to play Cooper. And our casting director had said that he said Kevin McKidd's in a play just down the road from where his office was. I can get a script to him. I just take it down to the theater and get it to him. And we're like, yeah, do it. I was like thinking of the guy. I was like thinking of Johnny Boy. Was he Johnny Boy? Can't remember who's called Tommy Boy in Tommy in Trainspotting. I was thinking, like a gangly thing with long hair and stuff. I was like, is that my guy? I'm not quite sure. And then thankfully Kev had a read of it, and we had a meeting together, and he looked very, very different. He kind of bulked up, and his hair was a bit shorter and stuff like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I totally see it now. And then so he came on board, and that just made the team. It was like, oh, and Liam Cunningham as well, of course. I'd seen Liam Cunningham on a TV show. It's funny, like the TV show I'd seen him in, he was playing an American, and then we got him to play this kind of really stiff upper lip Brit, but like he's as Irish can be. But again, a fabulous actor, and just a pleasure to work with.
I remember that movie coming out very vividly, and being at school, and it at the time, like, I had no idea about budgets of films or what things cost or anything like that. And I remember it coming out and being this like huge film that everyone wanted to see at school, and felt very mainstream, and like that, it was out in cinemas and everything else. But I guess at the end of the day, it's a low budget British film, but you got such an amazing release. I mean, I remember loads of my mates had it on DVD and everything else. Was that, I mean, that was that on the strength of the movie? How did you get such a decent release for, I mean, being your first film as well? Did it take a lot of convincing, or, I mean, on the strength of the movie, I guess once it was done, did it happen after it was finished, or?
It was I think it was a couple of things. I was certainly on the strength of the movie itself. I mean, Pathé were just phenomenal. The team at Pathé like got behind it so much that I think it's Alison Thompson who's their buyer had seen it. She's seen it. I don't know if she's seen it at Cannes or she's seen it somewhere anyway. But and she said like this is something interesting and passed it on to the rest of her team, and they got behind it so much that they gave it a big release. We did a great poster campaign, press campaign, all this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of it was right at the cusp of a new horror wave. Like there was a new wave of horror films that had just kind of started. We had like 28 Days Later was coming out and stuff like that. Horror was kind of just coming back into the popular thing, and there was a real audience for it, a real interest for it, and yeah, they just pushed it really, really hard, and it found that audience which I always wanted it to find, which is kind of like it's great for those who saw it at the cinema. Absolutely, that was the intention. It was always meant to be like a proper movie. But then there's also that same audience later on video, stuff like that, who are like lads coming back from the pub on a Friday night. You just want to stick something in the video, and it's perfect for that. As it turned out, like it was like hugely popular amongst the troops over in Afghanistan and Iraq. Like they were just watching it on like loop all the time, which was for me was like such a reward because I'd gone to such lengths to try and make the depiction of the soldiers accurate. And I think they really appreciated that. So they all were all watching it over in the desert, which I loved. I never got a chance to watch it with them, but I was like, oh, that would have been a fun experience.
Now for a quick break. Are you a writer, director, actor, costume designer, perhaps makeup artist? Are you interested in camera? This is the place to share your journey. We want to hear from you. How did you start your career? Has it started yet? And perhaps, if you're feeling brave, share with us your most embarrassing film-related moment. So slip into our DMs at Life in Film Pod on Instagram. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Life in Film, where you'll get episodes early and uncut amongst other treats. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life in Film Pod, and find our video episodes on YouTube by searching Elliot James Langridge Life in Film. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9-to-5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills, or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. And back to the show. Yeah. You must have, after this film came out as well, you must have had offers to do direct films and everything else. But obviously you went on to do The Descent, which you obviously wrote.
Yeah.
Was that a deliberate choice? You were like, actually, I want to write something and do my own thing. I mean, I'm sure there must have been other jobs about.
Yeah, no, I always wanted to write and direct my own stuff for sure. I can't remember that I got any offers off the back of Dog Soldiers beyond Celador coming to me and saying, what do you want to do next? And then that ultimately became The Descent. But I don't remember any offers at that point. After The Descent, some offers were coming in, but again, I wanted to do my own stuff. So I kind of stuck with that plan for better or worse, but I stuck with that plan. So yeah, it was interesting times, but it was nice to just have a film that had been successful with critics and audiences and stuff like that. Obviously, that's
The Descent. I worked with Mariana Bering, and the first thing I did when I met her on set was like, can I just ask you about The Descent? Like, I need to know how that was done. In terms of like, was the cave system in that, was it all a set? Like, how was that all done?
Yeah, there isn't a real cave in the whole movie. We all went, myself and the whole cast went caving up in Derbyshire before we filmed to get a feel for it, and it quickly became apparent that like if we tried to make that movie in a cave, people would have died. I mean, it's so impractical, but also for many reasons, but also because the nature of the cave was very specific in the script of like, well, we had to find a cave that did this, and I had to find a cave that did that, and like it just would have been such a ball ache trying to like scout hundreds of caves looking for something specific that we're after. So it was easier to build it. It was safer to build it. I wouldn't say it was like more comfortable to build it because the poor actresses, like we were filming it was Pinewood Studios, but we were in the soundstage that had no heating. It was January, and they were constantly covered in water, which was freezing. So like they were constantly like having to wrap these thermal blankets around them to stop them from getting hypothermia because they were shivering. They were just like coming every time we got cut. They were just like it was like so it was really tough for them, but they were amazing. Just such troopers, just an amazing cast. So we did some location work. We had some miniature caves. We had some miniature effects in there and some matte paintings, but the rest was all set. And then, and the trick with that was to keep the sets, not make them too grand, keep them claustrophobic. They were constantly like we had these spritzer things that were just like having mist in the air all the time, in the caves, and water running down the walls all the time. So they were kind of an unpleasant environment. They weren't pretty. They weren't. We didn't like them to be pretty. We made rules about how it was going to be lit. That only the characters' lights could light the scene or whatever it was, torch, flare, whatever. No other extraneous lights, and do it that way. And it was that presented its challenges for sure. But that I think that helps with the realism of it because when you're in a cave, there ain't no beautiful shafts of light making it look pretty. It's not like that. It's pitch black. And I wanted to get a sense of that on screen.
It is one of the most claustrophobic films I think I've ever seen. That along with Buried, I feel like it's just, yeah. If you're claustrophobic, I mean, anyone that hasn't seen that film already, I mean, they're probably not going to watch it because they're scared of watching it. But I want to ask you about the process of writing it, because the twist at the end is one of the most shocking moments in cinema history. I remember watching it for the first time and just being like, what? Like, how, when you were writing that, did you know that was what you were aiming for? Was that a kind of, did that come to you as you'd already written the majority of it? How did you sort of come up with that?
Yeah, I wanted to. There's two films that I was inspired by as far as the ending was concerned. I wanted to have an ending that was kind of bleak. I wanted to do a bleak ending that was kind of like The Thing. The Thing was a big thing of like I loved that cliffhanger of The Thing of just like leaving them there and you don't know quite how it ends. I love that ending. The other one was Brazil. The of the I think it's the director's cut, whatever it is. And in the director's cut, or whatever, it ends the film where like he's living this tranquil life out in the country, and then it kind of cuts back to the fact that actually no, he's completely insane. He's like strapped to a chair, and it's all in his head. And I just thought that's an awesome ending because it's both happy and sad at the same time. And so I kind of wanted to create an ending whereby in her mind she was back with her daughter again, and therefore she found some kind of happiness in here, but outside she's doomed. So I sort of conjured up that, and I don't know. I guess maybe I was probably just I was inspired or something at the time, and just these things just fell into place when I was writing it. From like I knew where I wanted to get, roughly speaking, but how to get there. I can't really remember the writing process that much, but certainly was. I knew I was making a dark movie with like I was having been made with Dog Soldiers. There's a lightness to it. It's scary, but there's also a lot of comedy that comes out of it as well. I wanted to dispense with that. There's some comedy in the early stages, but later on, I knew with Descent it was going to be a descent into darkness and madness, and terror, and that there's no real happy ending to be, got from that. After she's lost, the Sarah character, she's lost everything. She's lost her husband, she's lost her daughter, she's lost her friends, she's lost everything, and by the end, she's lost her mind as well. And so the only glimpse of happiness is in that insanity, in which she finds her daughter again, which I just thought was okay. There's kind of some weird poetry to this, but it is dark as fuck. And as it turned out, it was kind of too dark for the American audiences, and they clipped that little bit off the end to make it look like she kind of escaped at the end. But as I argue, it's like that's not a happier ending. Like, what future does she have here? Like, as she said, all her family are dead, all her friends are dead. She's probably going to be held responsible for that, if in some way. She's going to have a lot of questions to answer, and and she's probably going to end up locked up in an asylum for the rest of her life or something like that. But like, she lost it. So I was like, that's not really a happy ending, is it?
It was never gonna be a happy ending.
It was never going to be a happy ending.
I just remember that moment so distinctly. I was watching it with a load of mates. There was quite a few of us, like 10 of us watching it. And the reaction around the room as that moment happens was everyone was like, what? No, like, just like, I just remember it so clearly, like it was yesterday. But yeah, no, it's just such a
it was moment. Interesting. It was interesting for us because the last shot of the movie we shot was the last thing we actually shot. So it was the last day of filming, and it was the last setup, and we did that whole thing where it goes from her backwards and forwards. It's like on her, and then to the fire, and then up to the daughter, and then back to her again, and then you start to pull out, and then while the camera's over there, somebody's like picking the daughter and the cake out and replacing it with fire, and then we just pull out. It's all in camera, and we just pull out. No. And then we caught cut, and that was a wrap on the movie. And it was like, and all, because it was cinematic of the amount of fun we'd had making it. Was that on that last day, like all the cast came back, and we had a big party kind of right then and there. It was quite a relief to just get through it. but it's something about like doing something that dark and twisted, but everybody had a good time doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible movie. I want to ask how, like, if you could go back, or not even go back to your younger self, but give advice to writers, directors that are trying to do what you did at that stage where you got your movie made, Dog Soldiers, and then moved on and obviously did The Descent and had great success since then. What advice would you give to someone that's coming up now and trying to get, that first thing made? What advice would you give?
There's two parts to the answer, really. One is, and because I've kind of recently come up with a new answer to that question, but it really only deals with like once you've achieved what you want to achieve. The first part is the same answer, which is that the only way you're going to achieve it is just by stubborn determination, just single-mindedness of this is what I'm going to achieve, and not give up and never give up. Like, because even during the 6 years of waiting for Dog Soldiers to get together, I don't think there was any point at which I didn't think it was going to happen in the end. It was like, in my head, it's going to happen. It may take a little bit longer, but I know it is going to happen somewhere. So it is that kind of single-mindedness. And the second part of the answer is that once you've achieved that, once you've actually got what you want, don't be a dick. Like, but I'm discovering that from talking to crew, I'm discovering that an awful lot of directors kind of abuse their position, or because it's not a democracy, it is something of a dictatorship, and sometimes that can go to people's heads a little bit, and their ego gets the better of them, and a little bit of success can damage people in a bad way, or at the same time, failure can do the same thing, because some people overcompensate for their insecurities and their inabilities by being dicks, by being rude and unpleasant and bossing people around. And having talked to a lot of crew about this, because to my mind, is like everybody on a film set is as important as everybody else. You cannot make the movie without everybody. It's a machine. If you lose one cog, the whole thing grinds to a halt. And it doesn't matter like who's at the top, who's at the bottom. It's like you treat everybody with respect, everybody, and in the same respect you want back from them. And also you want to inspire people. Like, it's a problem that we have. It's a problem that we have in the world at the moment, that we don't have inspirational leaders. We don't have people that we aspire to, and when we do, we will do things. We will work harder for them, and your crew is going to work 10 times harder for you if you can inspire them, not shout at them and scream at them and treat them like shit. Inspire them, and then they will give you that 200%. That's a huge deal, I think, for any director to appreciate. Like, that's, when you're in that, because it's a privileged position. It is hard to be a director. It's a privileged position to get there. So when you do get there, respect the position that you're in, and don't abuse it. I think that's really important for the industry as a whole.
100%. I think, as you say, like, you're, as a director, you're leading, you're the captain of the ship, aren't you? So
absolutely, and you lead by example. You lead by example. Everybody follows your example. If you're a dick, they'll be a dick. If you can lead by example and like show them, that your heart and soul is in this project and you believe in it, they will start to believe in it too. Then they'll go the extra mile, and that matters on those days when you're like, shit, I need 15 minutes more, whatever. You want the crew to be like, yeah, 15 minutes, we'll do it. You don't want the crew to be going, sorry, mate, down tools, end of the day, we're not doing any more. So it's a difference. You get what you give.
You've been in the industry a long time, not to give away your age, but just to look at the credits that you've had, and obviously we were saying that you've written a lot of the movies that you've done, but in terms
of movies, all but one. There's only one.
All but one. Hellboy is the only one, right? Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to. I've heard your you talk about that film in the past, so I know that there's a mixed bag with that one. But before we go on to that, I want to just kind of list the TV work that you've done, because it's kind of insane. I mean, it's like hit after hit after hit after hit, like all these shows that I guess were, well, like Black Sails, Game of Thrones, Constantine, Hannibal, Westworld, Lost in Space. And when it comes to things like, Game of Thrones, that obviously became one of the biggest shows on the planet. So you going away and saying, oh, I'm going to go and direct a few TV bits. Was there a kind of gear change there where you're like, I've written and directed a few features, now I want to go and do some TV, but you picked so impeccably well. How and what was the how did that happen?
It wasn't so much initially, it wasn't really a choice. It was so I'd done Centurion, which had so like I'd done Dog Soldiers and I'd done Descent, and I was like flavor of the month after that, and then I did Doomsday, which kind of tanked in many respects, and then suddenly like, oh, it's not flavor of the month anymore. But I managed to get Centurion done after that, which kind of got me kind of back on the ladder again, but not massively. But the problem was, at that point, there was the beginning of the TV revolution. The streaming revolution was starting. HBO, and it was everything was just at the cusp of going mental just then, and other changes in the UK, like Celador Films, who had financed Centurion and The Descent, decided to basically stop making films anymore. They'd just done Slumdog Millionaire, and had a huge box office success, Oscar success, all this kind of stuff. And maybe they just figured, let's quit while we're ahead. It's not going to get any better than this, so let's just wind up operations. So they kind of quit financing movies. Pathé, who'd released Centurion, Dog Soldiers Descent, they were no longer into financing movies. They just wanted to be a distributor. So that kind of stopped there. So like suddenly in the UK, I was like, I couldn't find any backers to do my movies or the kind of movies I wanted to make. So I was really struggling to get any kind of film made then. And then kind of out of the blue, I got a phone call saying, do you want to come and direct an episode of Game of Thrones? And it wasn't completely random. What had happened was a lot of my crew from Centurion had gone on to work on Game of Thrones. So particularly Paul Hyett, stunt coordinator, and Camilla Napru, who was the horse master on Centurion. They'd both gone on to Game of Thrones. And they'd had season 1 of Game of Thrones. I'd actually approached them. I'd seen trailers for it. I was like, oh, this looks like my cup of tea. So this looks great for me. So I through my agent, I reached out to HBO, said I'd love to do an episode of Game of Thrones. But the answer I always got back was, we have our TV directors, we have our in-house directors. We're not going to go anywhere else. It's HBO. It was like very kind of insular at that time.
Right.
And so that was that. I didn't really think anything of it. And then like maybe a year later, I get a phone call one Saturday morning from the producer of Game of Thrones saying, would you like to come and direct an episode? And I was like, absolutely. How did this come about? Because of budget constraints, they'd had to kind of work around the fact that there was meant to be a big battle. And so at the end of season 2, they knew they were getting to the Battle of Blackwater. They knew they had to deliver a battle this time around. So HBO threw everything at it and said, right, if we're going to do a battle, let's do a battle. And so the writers and everybody and whatever, they had a director on board to direct this episode. It was episode 9, season 2, the Battle of Blackwater. And 2 weeks before filming, the director dropped out for whatever personal reasons. I don't know what it was. And so in a mad panic, they looked around for another director, and the stunt coordinator and Camilla Napru went to the producers and said, we did this movie called Centurion with Neil, have a look at it. Yeah, so it was like a Saturday morning, and they reached out. I got a phone call from the producer of Game of Thrones, who's fabulous, and she called me up and said, would you like to come and direct an episode? And she said that Paul Hyett and Camilla Napru had vouched for me and showed us some clips from Centurion and all this kind of stuff, and said that you were the guy to talk to. And I was like, yeah, that's fantastic. I'd love to come. Like, when is it? In a couple of months or something like that. She said, no, you'll start on Monday morning, 9 o'clock.
Oh my God.
And you've got a week's prep, and it's the biggest episode we've ever done. And I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I just dove in head first. And they said okay, what first? And they said okay, well, we've asked your movies to that point. They said, we'll bring him along too. So you've got somebody there who you work with, and come on over. They sent me the entire first season because I'd never seen it at that point. I was aware of it, but I never actually watched it.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent me the first season over that day. I watched them all back to back on the Sunday, read the script, and literally got on a plane 7 o'clock Monday morning, was in Belfast by 9 o'clock in the office, sitting down with the writers and everything to talk about it. And, and that week was just absolute bedlam. I mean, it was great. It was just full throttle. We had to, I had to get in and one of the problems with the script I identified right away was that the battle itself made no sense. It was very vaguely described in the script. And I said, first things first is that this battle has to make sense. So, they can't just 40,000 men just pile onto a beach and start hammering at a door, which is kind of what it was written as, is there's a door in the wall of the castle, and 40,000 men are all just going to I'm like, yeah, I'm maybe going to be able to hit the door. The rest are going to be standing on like lemons being shot at. That's no way to attack a castle. So I said, well, we need to bring a few things into this. They need to be bringing siege ladders and ropes and stuff. And yes, they're going to attack the door, but they're going to attack right along the whole castle wall and, get onto the castle walls. And I said, well, they also need a battering ram or something. And so, like myself and the designers, like I came up with this idea of like, well, what if you had a boat that you can turn upside down and it becomes this protective cover, and underneath is the battering ram, which you kind of seen before. So we designed this boat that floats into the thing, and then they turn it upside down and they carry it up to the gate and they start battering the gate in with that. And arrows are sticking outside on the outside of the boat. And they built it like within the week. They built it.
Wow.
And just all kind of crazy stuff like that we brought into it. Like the character Starathi, like in the original script, he basically just stood on the beach. And I said, no, he's got to climb the walls and get in the battle. And so they were so open to my ideas. They're such a great bunch of people, and they were like, yeah, we'll give it a go. And added to the script, and then the next, I think it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we were filming in Belfast in a quarry in the pouring rain, freezing cold night shoots for like 4 weeks, and when we got it in the end, and it was just an incredible experience.
Archers! Knock your arrows! Knock arrows! Draw!
And so that was my first TV job.
Wow.
And off the back of that, then I got Black Sails, and I went back and did another Game of Thrones, and then just various things came along. But it was interesting. And again, all that time I was trying to get features made, or I was pitching for jobs on feature films. Like, I pitched for like so many different projects and didn't land those jobs. And in the meantime, I was getting this TV work, which was amazing. And instead of doing like one feature every couple of years, I was able to do like maybe 3 TV jobs in a year, and go from doing a Western in Westworld with a bit of sci-fi in it, and then pirates, and then, time travel, and then Hannibal. And it's like going from genre to genre. It was great. I loved that. So I really enjoyed, that period of time. And it's not something that I've left. I want to do more TV stuff, just depending on what it is. I want to develop my own TV series as well, which I'm doing, but it's a slow process. But yeah, I mean, and also the talent that I got to work with, on the TV space. I mean, obviously the cast of Game of Thrones is phenomenal, amazing cast on Black Sails. On Westworld, I got to work with Anthony Hopkins and Ed Harris, and people like that. It was astonishing. So that was just remarkable, really, really remarkable.
God, it just shows you though that you've been doing this a long time, and you've done all these great films that you've written yourself. You've done all this amazing TV, but then, as you say, you're still pitching to do certain jobs, which just blows my mind. It
depends on the jobs. If it's something that really appeals to me, like, the idea of doing a Predator movie or an Alien movie would be like, oh my God, I'd like to have a go at doing something like that, and I'd want to have a hand in the writing of something as well, definitely. But certain genres, certain projects, I went after Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I was desperate to do that one because I did a great pitch document and all this kind of stuff for it. And eventually they went with somebody else, but it was like, I was, for quite some time I was like almost attached to that film. I was developing a movie with Sam Raimi, a thing called Burst, which was going to be a 3D thing, people exploding. And got to meet Sam Raimi and develop that for a while, and that fell through. So there's constantly been like irons in the fire that's sadly haven't come to pass, or you get down to the last 2. I think it was like down to the last 2 on Predators, and
I heard this rumor That would have been amazing.
And it was like, we both of the directors like were flown down to Texas and were kind of interviewed by Rodriguez, and I had a great weekend with Rodriguez and went to his studio, and we went out and had barbecue and all this kind of stuff, and it was great. I think the problem there was that myself and Rodriguez have quite similar personalities. We're quite reserved, and so he was looking for somebody less reserved in a way, I think. And that's kind of where he went. So who knows? I mean, but yeah, no, I did all these things while doing the TV work, and that was an adventure in itself. I got to travel across the States, working in Canada and Atlanta and places like that, doing these TV things, working with great crews. So, it was fun.
I heard a rumor that you were possibly attached to Direct Drive at one point. Is that true?
Absolutely. I was developing that script for 2 years with the writer, working with it. When I was going to do it, it was going to be a very different kind. Very different in the sense that it would have had more car chases in it, and better car chases in it for sure. Because I did feel that
it's called Drive.
Yeah. But my version was way more modeled on films like Bullet and the original Point Blank with Lee Marvin. Those kind of 60s kind of movie, not the 60s, 70s movie, French Connection, Bullet, that kind of thing. Kind of vibe to it. And myself and the writer, developed these 2 car chase sequences. They were both like, I was really, really happy with them because they were stories into themselves. And that there was real kind of drama in the car chases. It wasn't just driving fast, and there was 2 excellent car chases, and then ultimately that fell by the wayside. What happened there was Hugh Jackman was attached to play the lead, and he saw he saw Doomsday, or he saw what happened with Doomsday in terms of the critical response and the commercial response. And he got me kicked off the show. He got me kicked off the movie. And then he left the movie anyway. So that's how it kind of ended.
That's
there.
So shit because you've done so many great films, and I actually really enjoyed Doomsday. I don't know why it got such a kick in. It's so shit that someone can judge you on one film that they didn't like, but why can't they look at the other movies as well? That's shit.
Yeah. Or at least meet you and talk to you about it and get your take on the movie. But hey, in Hollywood, you're only as good as your last picture. My last picture at that point was Doomsday, and it was getting mauled by the critics and stuff like that. And it's funny because I had such a great time making Doomsday, and I'm really proud of it. There's 1 or 2 things I'd change about it, but on the whole, it's like I love the fact that somebody gave me that money to make something completely insane. A British action adventure post-apocalyptic thing set in the UK with no significant stars in it. Good actors, great actors, but no real star in it, like a movie star in it. And somehow they gave me the money to do that, and I'm like, I think you're mental, but I really appreciate it.
It was like a British. It was like a British Mad Max.
Absolutely, British Mad Max. That was the plan. And since then, it's achieved this real kind of cult status, and I get more and more people coming to me and saying, "I fucking love Doomsday. I love Doomsday." And then, of course, when COVID happened, I was kind of like, "Shit, this is like Doomsday." And there was a point during COVID when they closed the border to Scotland. And I was like, "Oh, here we go. It's Doomsday all over. They're going to build a wall. The whole thing's going to happen." So I thought that was funny. But yeah, I mean, it's getting a solid cult status. I think people appreciate it now that they didn't market it very well in the States, and it was difficult to find that audience, I think. But I'm still proud of it. It's still a Gonzo movie, and it was fun to make.
I love because when you watch it, you go, "This is different from any other British movie. There isn't anything else like this." Yeah, I love that you went there and you did something so different.
Well, there's not many action movies of that scale made in the UK at all.
Yeah.
I struggle to kind of think of them.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So,
if I may, I would like to ask you about Hellboy. obviously huge budget film. Obviously something you didn't write, so you came in to direct it. Again, a film I enjoyed it. But what was the process? I mean, obviously going and doing something with that sort of budget, and I'm sure a lot of interference from the studio. Can you tell us the story of how that all went down?
Well, it was born of desperation, actually. I'd gone 9 years without making a feature film.
Mm.
And this was the first one to be offered to me, significantly, like to be properly offered to me. And so I just jumped at blindly jumped at it rather than judging on the script. And the script was never great. The script was terrible. But I kind of figured, well, maybe I can make something of it. And the idea was, I was pitched as like, we want the horror version of Hellboy. And I was like, okay, the horror version of Hellboy, let's do it. So I dove into the research and into the character and all this kind of stuff. But then when it actually came to the making of the film, I wasn't allowed to do that version. I wasn't allowed to work on the script. I wasn't allowed to make that version of the movie at all. They had their own agenda. And then, I got caught between two different producers, Avi Lerner and what's he called now? Blank. Anyway, the producer of Die Hard and other great movies, weirdly. Anyway, so these two producers, they hated each other, and one controlled the rights and one controlled the money. And so there were like constantly like this battle between these two producers of, the one who controlled the rights had like final creative say on everything, but that means nothing when you don't control the money. So, they're pulling and pushing, and I'm caught somewhere in between. And so, yeah, so I was like stuck there, and one of the producers who was on set all the time, constantly like overruling me on all my decisions, and like even like during cast rehearsals and things like that, constantly overruling me. I never experienced anything like it, and like the first AD like almost had a nervous breakdown because Idler's like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. It was a mess. It was an absolute mess, and it wasn't helped by the fact that the script was not great. And I spoke to Frank Darabont afterwards, and he said like the bottom line is like everything, no matter what, is the script any good? Then if the script's good, you're on a good start. If the script's bad, you can't polish a turd. You just can't. And so I gave it my all to a large degree, but there just came a point, especially after I finished filming, was just like, I give up. I can't fight you guys constantly. Like it was draining, just like trying to be in a creative struggle, trying to protect some kind of vision and just having it ripped apart at the seams every time. And so it was heartbreaking. I'd never thought in my life I would get to the stage where I was driving to work to make a movie and dreading it every day. It was like thinking, I hate this job. I hate going to work to make this movie every day. Yeah. I never thought I would get to that. And that really crushed my soul a bit. So, I learned a lot from that process of, as I say, I did it after to make a feature film again, but it was the wrong motivation. It was the wrong reason to do it. And ultimately, and the funny thing is that now I do get people going to me saying, "Oh, that's great. I really enjoyed it." And it's like, I'm glad people enjoy it and all that. I don't think there's much of me in it at all. There's very little of me in it. And a lot of people think, well, because it's super gory, well, that must be Neil. And actually, I have nothing to do with that. I was long gone from the process when all that came into it. So because it was all CG, I wanted to do stuff practically on set. We were never allowed to do that. I wanted to do the giants the same way we'd done the giants on Game of Thrones, because the giants of Game of Thrones look real. They look fantastic because they are real. They're just composited in, and they're real guys, but they're made bigger and cleverly put into the scenes. I was like, we want to do that on with the giants and Hellboy. Nope, we ended up doing it all CG. They look terrible. They look like cartoons. And
why
it's just
did they push for that? Is it just quicker? Is it cheaper?
It's quicker, possibly cheaper. I don't know. A lot of it's got to do with the fact that they wanted to push more work through their own VFX company. So one of the producers owns a VFX company, and he basically makes a lot of money by pushing VFX through that, and then he takes a nice cut off the top kind of thing. So that
Right.
there's a way there's financial reasons for doing this kind of stuff. It's not creative choices really.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there's things like that going on. But it was just a fairly unpleasant experience all around.
Mm.
And yeah, and I learned from it. And so, the next, if on that film I had, more money than I'd ever had before, but zero creative control, on the following movie, I had no money and 100% creative control on The Reckoning, which although brought that the no money thing brings its own set of challenges, the creative control ultimately left me feeling way more satisfied as a filmmaker. Of like, I can try and overcome these challenges creatively, even if I can't, you can't afford. You try and think your way out of corners and stuff like that, and it makes for a much more satisfying experience for me, if not my bank balance. But whatever, that's the way it goes.
Strange question, but one of the things about Hellboy that that made me double take was the casting of, I can't remember her real name, but Mo from EastEnders.
Yes.
Is it Mo?
Yeah.
I loved seeing her in that. I was like, this is amazing, because isn't she Gary Oldman's sister as well?
She's Gary
Yeah.
Oldman's sister. Yeah.
But I just loved that, because it was like just this real London like character, and suddenly popping up in this huge budget special effects driven movie. Whose decision was that?
I've got a great video somewhere of her. I think it was definitely partly my decision, and she came up as an option. I was like, yeah, let's get Mo from
I
EastEnders in
love
as
that. I love
owner of the
that.
chip shop, because I just want to see her firing a machine gun. Because the thing that came to my mind was there's a shot in Goldfinger. There's a shot in Goldfinger where the Aston Martin goes flying through, and it cuts to this old lady with a machine gun blasting away at James Bond. And I was like, that's so cool. Let's do that. And Mo, I don't know where the name came from, but somebody suggested her.
I
I
love
should
it.
remember what her real name is, but she's always Mo to us.
Yeah.
I've got some fantastic footage of her test firing a machine gun somewhere, which is it was just awesome. So little things like that. I got to work with Ian McShane, who was fabulous. Mila Jovovich, who was, I mean, I say negative things about the film, but I have to say that Mila was an absolute legend. I mean, and when she came on set, you could feel everybody like just pick up, because she brought that energy and pleasantness and all that kind of
She's
stuff with her. And
iconic.
yeah, and when she's awesome with it. She's super professional, and she just wanted to be the best she possibly could, and she could see what was going on. She could see all the systematic abuse I was taking, and she would often come over to me and like give me a big hug and just say, "I feel your pain. I feel your pain." And she was awesome, and not a bad word to say about her. Ian McShane was the same. And so some of the other the smaller cast members and stuff like that. We had good cast, some good crew, some real heroes in there. That just wanted to work hard and make a good movie, and it was just scuppered by the powers that be, really. And then of course ultimately you're battling the Guillermo's army of fans who literally no matter what you do, they're going to try and rip it to shreds and say it should have been Guillermo, but whatever. I got in contact with Guillermo beforehand just to say, I get some kind of approval from him, and he kind of washed his hands of the whole thing, which was,
No,
which
fair
was
enough. No, I had to ask about it, but it is a film that I know plenty of people that really enjoyed it, and as I say, I enjoyed it myself. To finish this on a silly note.
Most embarrassing moments, yeah.
Well, no, there's a moment that I look upon now as being cringingly embarrassing, which was many years ago when we were at the Empire Film awards, and I won the best horror film for The Descent, and I was so drunk, and I got on stage and made this really embarrassing speech. And the thing that's so cringeworthy is, like, I invited the cast to join me on stage, and I referred to them as my bitches.
That's brilliant.
And
I'm gonna have to find this footage and insert.
Oh God, I know it was on the Empire website for years and years, and I think they long since got rid of it. And hopefully, it's never to be found again, because it was just like, oh my God! Like the next morning, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? It's like people must think I'm such a dick. But yeah, I think that's probably the thing I'm most embarrassed of.
That's perfect. Thank you, Neil. This has been wicked, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm so sorry I've overrun. I've just been geeking out and asking all the questions I want to know. So I'm sorry that we've been going for so long, but really appreciate it, man, and look forward to seeing the next movie that you bring out. I'm a big fan.
All right, man. Well, there's a couple on the way. I mean, the Lair came out on Shudder in January, but it's coming out on Blu-ray and digital July 17th.
Nice.
Then I did a gangster movie last year called Duchess, which we're currently sorting our distribution on now. And then I've literally just finished doing a giallo slasher movie that we shot in Malta, and I'm editing that now. So
wow. Yeah, I saw the list of, you've got a load of stuff coming out. So a lot to watch.
Plenty of plates spinning.
Yeah. Keep the plates spinning. That's the key, I guess.
Always.
All right, man. Thank you so much, and take care, man.
All right.
Cheers.
Take care,
Bye.
Bye.
It's a Laughing Film, motherfucker. Subscribe and like and follow.
Thank you to our guest Neil, and thank you to writer-director Paul Hyett for putting us in touch. And as always, thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp.
And I always wanted to do a horror film set in a cave. It's the classic environment, and horror films are best set in the dark, and you can't get any more dark than this.
6 feisty, fearless women
who are all friends and share a passion for climbing and the outdoors. One weekend, they go on an adventure together down a cave.
Here's to our adventure. As they descend further and further into this cave, things start to go drastically wrong.
They get lost amongst this sort of labyrinth of tunnels.
And this is when we found out that not only are we in the wrong cave, we are in a cave that nobody knows about.
And you see the fracture of the friendships and the fracture of minds.
What it is about is a descent into madness and a physical descent into the depths of the earth.
And just when you think things can't go more wrong, they can.
I just saw something ahead in the tunnel.
Discover that they're not the only people in the cave, there's something else. These other beings that don't really want them to survive.
And we still haven't figured out which way's out. Don't tell anyone, but the dark scares me. I'm so cool.
Things going towards my eyes or things being put in my eyes frightens the life out of me.
When I was reading the script for this film, I read it in the summer. I was laying in the garden, beautiful sunshine, wearing my sunglasses. Got to halfway through the script, hairs were going up on the back of my neck, and I had to go inside and stop reading the script.
Good God. Squished and through. It's unbelievable.
What scares me? Wasps scare me.
I'm not really afraid of anything physical. I'm not afraid of heights, really. I'm not afraid of spiders or anything like that.
Spiders and women and spider women. Get that?
I think anything that's set in a house scares me the most because I'm in a house. If I saw this film, it would be okay because I don't generally go caving. Or even the Blair Witch Project, I don't generally go camping, so I can deal with it. But anything where there's things in a house, I freak out.
Horror films are a lot of fun to make and a lot of fun to watch audiences watching. You can hear the fear, you know, you can hear the gasps, you can hear the jumps and the screams and the laughs and all that kind of stuff that you get when you're watching a horror film. It's a very audible reaction that you get.
I actually went to the cinema a few nights ago with Neil and Sam, the director of photography. We went to go and see The Grudge, which is great movie, and they were sitting either side of me and loving it, and I was just avoiding it, and I was, oh my goodness, and Neil kept on poking me because I was shaking.
Jaws would be probably my favourite horror.
American Werewolf in London, because I watched that as a kid and just thought that is tremendous.
Boringly, The Shining.
It's one of my favourite films, so The Shining, without a doubt.
What's that? Murder spelled back. I've thought about it for the last 3 days and I still can't come up with a definite one.
Be The Thing, which was pure spectacle or prosthetics.
Evil Dead 2.
It's probably completely not objective, but it's definitely Dog Soldiers.
Yes, yeah. Ask you what your favourite, because I don't watch horror movies, what your favourite horror movie was?
Of my favourite horror films and the films that have inspired this more than any other, I'd have to say Deliverance, which although isn't technically a horror film, is pretty scary. Alien and The Shining. Each dealing with aspects of this film in different ways. Shining about somebody going insane. Alien about atmosphere and menace and dark spaces. And Deliverance about the idea of an adventure trip that goes wrong.
It's so inspiring how much love and passion he has for film and especially horror. When he talks about it, he becomes like a little boy just talking about the gore.
Put the shits right up the audience eyes.
He finds them hysterical, really funny, and I just went, oh, that's a different way of looking at it.
And Mark. And cut there. Cut there. Super.
I think there must be a dark streak running through me, but I just love scaring the pants off people. Ever since we conceived the script idea, there's been a kind of running joke that this film is 6 chicks with picks.
To explain.
I'd seen Dog Soldiers and I loved it and I wanted to work with Neil. And once I'd read the script, I just thought it was interesting to have an all-female cast.
Which in an action horror film was quite unique.
7 weeks, really intense filming, all female. And I thought, oh, well, this is gonna be interesting.
I confess that I went into it cautiously, having worked with a pretty much all male ensemble cast on Dog Soldiers. But at the end, we've managed to achieve that same atmosphere of collaboration and a good sense of fun, but also a good sense of professionalism, and everybody's just mucking in.
You know, to be honest with you, it's such an ensemble thing, you know, cast and crew together. So much of the crew's male, so it balances it out.
Hey!
I think you do. I think this might be something for Susie.
And the crew are brilliant, absolutely wonderful, and that's working really nicely and having a great time with them.
Look at this bunch of tossers.
No. It's just really like having your little gang with you the whole time. No.
Because we are very friendly. We had to bond really quickly. We were doing climbing the first week of knowing each other, where you're holding the rope and you're basically, you know, your friend's up there on a wall. Your friend you've known for half an hour is up on the wall, and you've got her life in your hands.
We learned basic climbing techniques and how to abseil and use a harness and rig up ropes, which is really exciting.
I went down with them and did my first bit of abseiling and things like that on a waterfall, and it was great. But it's not something that I do as a pastime.
And we did a lot of research. We went caving to various caves in the UK to try and get stuck in tiny small spaces and to be in awe of the huge spaces.
Oh my God. He went caving in Derbyshire. It was really good fun, just kind of getting used to all the equipment.
Doing a lot of upper strength exercises, a lot of pull-ups and hanging there for a bit, which creates massive respect from guys in the gym, I can tell you.
I was actually saying to one of the girls on set, you know, it's you knowing how to grab parts of the wall. I'm so glad that we had that training, because you could feel quite clumsy and it is quite dangerous.
As long as I look up, I'm fine. Just don't look down.
So we did a course of climbing, we did whitewater rafting training.
Did you enjoy it?
We went real caving underground and just generally kept fit.
This isn't a film production at all. It's actually a subversive training program for the CIA.
For my character, I had to chop my hair off. I was down there. It was a bit traumatic for the first week or two, but it's cool.
I didn't really prepare mentally. I just prepared what I thought the journey of the character was going to be, and it's quite dramatic, the change she goes through. It's almost it's not really a full circle, it's more of a spiral.
Almost always when I start working on a character, I start writing a diary as the character. So one thing which for me was very important with Rebecca is very, very, very safety. Safety first, so always look around and see which things could possibly be dangerous. See how are people around you doing? Do they look like they could be flipping out or not?
You know, I have done this before, you know.
I'm only looking after you.
And I appreciate it in small doses.
So to get into that thing and make that natural, kind of spend a few days, a few weeks, really annoying your friends, going, checking them out the whole time.
Don't try and justify this.
What do you mean? What does she mean?
Oh,
wait a minute. You filed a flight plan with Mountain Rescue. If we don't report in, they'll just come looking for us.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work, except I filed a plan for Borum Caverns, and this is not Borum Caverns, it's a Juno.
These girls are game for anything, and on screen they're just mind-blowing. They're a really, really solid bunch, and it's been a dream to work with them.
He knows his movies big time, and I'm a complete nerd when it comes to movies, so it's been good.
This is Russell Crowe, apparently.
He sets a great example, showing people that you don't have to shout or be forceful in order to get the work done.
Because, you know, some of the scenes are really quite horrific, and you've got to make them believable, you've actually got to be experiencing these emotions, and he's been really patient and always given us space.
Encourages coming to set with an open mind about things, even in terms of the dialogue. And sometimes I find that frustrating. In other situations, I found it frustrating when you get new lines on the day, or why don't we try it completely different to how it's written. But in this experience, it's been really enlightening, actually, and lots of fun.
Yes, Shona, whatever you say, Okay, close up, okay.
Good. It's not improvising. It's maybe a bit more ad-libbing, but it's sort of thinking of all the possibilities you could play the scene in.
He's very collaborative, absolutely knows what he wants, but is confident enough, I guess, in his abilities to actually, take the best of everybody's contributions.
I remember him saying that he wasn't interested in us playing one-dimensional characters.
Come on, Jesse, it's freezing. Let's go back to the car.
And I think in horror, it's very easy to do that because, you know, horror can easily be rely heavily on a formula. And he really allowed us to, you know, flesh these characters out, give them lots of different levels, give them a backstory, and we really worked hard on those backstories.
So I think we would have taken the normal safety procedures and kind of worked out roughly what the route is. And I think if Paul is there, he also could be there because they have had an affair. There's all that other stuff that I don't know. That's just I always read it that's how it was.
The first draft of the script was a lot more sort of caricatured, that the women were a bit more sort of stylized and slightly unrealistic.
You know, the script is relentlessly linear in terms of, you know, we never revisit anything. It just keeps moving straight forward. And I think the environment through which the characters move has stayed pretty much the same.
The action hasn't really changed at all. The actual story progression and the physical action, you know, that happens within it hasn't changed at all.
Draft 1, there was a cave entrance, and they abseiled down, and then they went down the sinkhole, what's it called? Can't remember what it's called.
And that's down the pipe.
Yeah, well, I can't remember what that space is called. But they moved through basically exactly the same physical spaces in the first draft as they're going to in the film.
The
other side.
Yeah, you come up, hand on the rock, right hand on the rock, you know, look to where Sarah's gone, but she's gone. And then you hear the screaming behind you, so then roll back over again to that side, look back there, and then hold yourself out and take yourself back. But the characters have just gone from strength to strength and become much more real and more human. And it's just been a question of just adding layers to them. I call it the flaky pastry principle.
And I find it fantastic that we can explore those metaphors in such a tactile way. I think that is something that is missing from a lot of art nowadays.
For me, as an Asian actor, one of the key things was that it wasn't written as an Asian character. It was an opportunity for me to play a really well thought out character, which was very full.
Sarah, I haven't had a chance to say that I'm really sorry I didn't stay around longer after the accident.
And that, for any actor, is like a real blessing. You don't come across those sorts of characters very often.
Each character has some kind of a highlight moment. And of those moments, I love it when the character of Holly gets angry. And she starts off as very happy-go-lucky, and then at a certain point she gets angry and she flares up.
Don't try and pin this fucking shite on me!
Really, really fun to play, and she dies horribly. I shouldn't really say that, should I?
I love the fact that Sarah and Juno go a little bit mental, and when they get into the physical action, things get pretty interesting there. From its original conception, I envisioned this film as being very, very dark, both in tone and, you know, in visual style, which is to make it as dark as possible.
When you think it's dark when you turn out the lights, well, down there, it's pitch black.
Neil's produced a beautiful script that really helped. It was very easy to see the kind of the flow of the spaces, the caves, large, big, huge spaces, and going down to little tiny spaces.
What's great on the sets is that you can actually allow yourself to sort of give life to that panic that, you know, you do feel, because if you're in an enclosed space, you do feel that claustrophobia and you do feel that fear. But when you're actually in a caving situation, you can't really give life to that fear, because being panicked obviously is hugely dangerous.
Action. Whoa!
It's something where if you start thinking about it, it's freaky, so you just don't. Because you know that if you would think about it, if you think about masses and masses and masses of bricks above you, you go a bit mad, but just kind of don't.
Quite a few members of the crew are claustrophobic, and they've been shuddering when they go onto some of the stages and see the spaces that the actresses have to crawl through.
My boob's going to fit. It was a challenge. I had to sort of concentrate on breathing when we were doing the caving.
Action!
I'm a big sissy. I can get my head around most things. The dark does scare me because I've got quite a vivid imagination.
I just want to ask you about the vagina. Sorry, I mean cave. Are you impressed with it? Does it conform to your specifications?
It's a lovely, tight crack. What can I say?
Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, the slime is arriving to lubricate the cave with.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, that's using. What do you think of the vagina?
The vagina's fantastic.
Yeah, we can reposition it as well, and if anybody gets in the morning.
I mean, tell me what your line is in this scene.
What, going through the large vagina?
Yes.
I get to yell, what is it? Oh yeah, it's a tight crack, but I can make it.
What I love about this kind of stuff is that you just kind of throw this stuff at it. You just like come up with these daft ideas, you put it in it, and people can just like read whatever they want into it. Be my guest.
There's quite a lot to read into it.
Fine, be my guest. It's just this.
Do you mind if you've got?
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. I didn't want there to be any like real gratuitous light sources in this caves. I mean, it's proving a problem as we're filming it to suddenly think, well, how are we actually going to light this scene because they've only got a box of matches on them. So right, well we use a box of matches. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we use a box of matches. Toward the end of the film, though, they start setting things on fire, and it gets a bit easier for us.
We had a few different ways of creating the caves. Some of them were moulded, so we took moulds from real existing cliff faces, like the one behind me, which was a real hard slate structure. And other caves were more dribbly, kind of with stalactites, kind of calcium deposits. We've got a little, dressed in little wax stalactites, so when the girl's coming in, they're showing their torch around the space. The little wax stalactites backlight, and they should light up nicely. We used the same material, same foam, spray. We just used it in different ways.
You actually have to kind of see them to believe them, because they're these really realistic caves and alcoves and tunnels which suddenly open up into these huge sort of rooms filled with the most amazing stone architecture, and it's all a form of polystyrene, which is just mind-blowing.
Simon's done a fantastic job in the production design, but we do have a problem of not having enough money to make the set stretch throughout the whole story.
We were looking at building a very expensive tank made of metal and big and robust, and people were talking about how many gallons and tons of water it was going to take. So to make it simple, I just said, well, we should shoot it in a bath. Created a system where we're revamping the caves, so we're only basically building 6 caves, but changing the look through colour and texture, so adding stalactites, maybe making one of them wet, one of them very dry and dusty. So we're hopefully fooling the audience into thinking that the cave system is much bigger than what we're actually building. Yes, we've reused the wall, the back wall. On the entrance chamber, it was very kind of flat, and all the striations in the rock were very horizontal. And then for the cathedral cavern, we've hoisted up that side 8 foot to make the striations run diagonally, to hopefully change the look of it. Also on the entrance chamber, we had lots of plants growing on it and water pouring down it. The cathedral cavern was very dry. This time it's very wet. We covered it in lots of stalactites to change the look of it.
It's great to work with because although you're surrounded by crew and cameras on sort of several sides, you can sort of just turn your face slightly, and it's as if you're actually in a real cave. And you get the same sense of claustrophobia that you get when you're caving. For the Bone Dam set, we had only, I think, 4 days to revamp it from one set, which was the cathedral cavern, to the Bone Dam.
All right, now we can start again.
It involved basically laying down a 50-foot square tank. I wanted the set to be very wet, so there's like a 1-inch tank of water covering the floor, and applying all these big stalactite structures and these big columns, kind of looking like it's made of a calcium deposit of some sort. It's really weird, and you're not really sure if the towers are made of bones themselves. And then we had 500 bones made, dressed in around the floor as if they'd been washed up against the structures. It looked pretty good. It's big.
Action!
And they've done a sterling job in ripping sets apart and putting them back together in a different order to make a new set. And that's sort of become a slight challenge now, but because they're so good at what they do, it's not that much of a problem for them. It's a 5p rule.
What's that?
Preparation prevents piss-poor performance.
If we'd have had more monies, let's say, we could have done a few shots differently. We've built big sets on this production, but there are some shots that we could have gone further back and back and back and seen a huge, amazing space. We are extending some of the sets using visual effects, so we're doing matte paintings to make them feel larger than they really are. But it would have been nice to have built bigger sets next time.
We're doing all the creatures.
Human beings. They're all the same bunch of dolls.
1,000 bones that we manufactured. All the prosthetic violence towards the humans.
Really?
All the dead animals. 2 goats, 2 sheep, 2 cows, giant elk. I made this last night, pretty much overnight. Ripped it up, carved it from a tree. Neil wanted maggots on the giant dead elk we made. I have an absolute phobia against maggots, and that's one reason I didn't go to Scotland to film the giant dead elk scene, is just because I just can't deal with being anywhere near maggots.
Bit icky.
Don't touch it.
You wouldn't want to pick it off.
What do you think did that, Sam? A bear?
What is this? Nature detectives? Could have been Bigfoot for all you know. Come on.
Stop poking it with a fucking stick. Let's go.
Seeing how the prosthetics guys work, and that is incredible. I didn't realise how much time and effort goes into that.
Human prosthetics, basically, all the girls get something, apart from Sarah.
Before we started filming, I came in and I did a full body cast. They've just put it in mould and just made a full prosthetic of my body for, obviously, when I'm dead and throwing me down a pit.
In there is mascara, not eyelashes. And basically that, I won't do it now, but that clips onto that, which is a cast of her waist upwards. And what we do is basically put a layer of wax inside, close them, put plastiline pour. Yeah, we get a smooth wax body out, which we sculpt all together, and then, go from there.
It's really bizarre. It's not nice at all, actually. It looks really real. But your arm's like twisted sideways and stuff. Yeah, a bit odd.
Oh, hookers! Who do I throw it at? Where's Billy? Where's...
We have Sam, who gets her throat ripped out. That's a prosthetic, which is a throat piece which will go around her neck, and a plug which is put in, and this will all be coloured to her, and her throat literally gets ripped out and blood will gush out.
You look gorgeous.
Juno will get her leg stabbed. Paul, at the start, gets a scaffold pole through his head.
Action. Show me in the face.
Made a head for that. And Holly gets her neck ripped out.
I just had a neck piece just wrapped around with the pump. It was a gusher. And that was quite fun.
As well as a compound fracture to leg.
The scene where Holly breaks her leg is actually quite horrific.
Everybody grab a corner. We need to move her out of the water, okay? Okay. Nice and easy now.
It was just a slip-on prosthetic of my leg, bones and ligaments, and basically a pump, blood pump.
This was the actual prosthetic, which was used on Holly, which basically is a silicone skin, which was just a slip-on, and we had some bone pieces, which would go in, and basically there was blood tubing coming each way, which would just bleed and bleed and bleed, and as Sam tries to push a bone in, which it would just slip in like that, blood would just absolutely gush out.
No! Just keep fighting down, baby.
It was brilliant. Just trying to do something a bit different, which hasn't been seen before.
Magnificent performance. Bravo.
They're cavemen who didn't leave the cave, and they've evolved in this environment over thousands of years. A community of them live down here as families, and they thrive in this underground environment. They've lost their eyesight.
Hello.
They have acute hearing and smell, and they're expert climbers, so they can go up any rock face, you know, and they function perfectly in the pitch black, and that is their world. And these girls infringe upon their world, and the crawlers are simply defending their territory.
The inspiration for the crawlers came from Neil, who was very definite about it.
What a lovely creation here.
He wants some of your log.
I'm going to tease him with my log.
He was sort of saying that basically he wanted them to have a slight influence on Nosferatu. We wanted to sort of have a slight vampiric design, but not looking like a vampire.
Can I take these out?
Oh, they come out?
It was just the idea of, like, if you were going to have these creatures living underground, what would they be? Where would they come from? And elements came into the story of, like, finding a cave painting as if it was, you know, prehistoric cave painting. And I thought, well, okay, so cavemen, what if they were cavemen, and what if they were actually more human? Because to me, making them more human makes them more scary.
What did you see?
A man. I saw a man.
Are you sure?
Yes! And it's not the first time. I thought I saw someone before, but now I'm sure. Look, if there is somebody down here, then maybe they can help get us out.
He gave me a Photoshop design that he'd done. It was really good, but originally it had huge eyes and we'd done a test which wasn't really what we all wanted.
Fire starter.
So we basically kept working on sculptures and making it smaller, more human, and went with contact lenses and gave it more human quality.
Where would you like me? Jolly good.
And it would have taken about 4 weeks to lock down the final design that worked better as a prosthetic.
What's your back like?
Pull me off.
He's a bit
Oh, you fucker! You've got...
Oh, you scared me. What an off.
Oh my god, that was brilliant.
Your turn.
If a Klingon and Spock had a child, and it was totally hairless and a bit shorter and quite sinewy, and was cousins with Gollum. That's basically what a crawler looks like.
It's like the natural born smoker, a weedy, scrawny, horrible, dangly thing.
We wanted to sort of cross between a creature that lived in a cave, but with a slight sort of change in their bone structure and their spines, and almost like they've evolved one stage into a bat.
These creatures have these fantastic ears, which have been created, which is how they survive and move around. Their ears are their main sensory part. I met Neil a few years ago through a friend, and he invited me to work on a short film with him called Combat, which was just fantastic, and everybody just jumped in there and done that for a weekend. And then he invited me on to Dog Soldiers, which was tremendous. And then this came up, and he said, look, come and be a beast.
Craig Conway and Les Simpson are my actors of choice. That they have been in every film that I've made one way or another. And it was pretty difficult to get there. It was like, I'm making an all-female ensemble film, where am I going to get them in? Then it occurred to me that what if they play the crawlers? And I wasn't sure if they'd be up for it, but they were well up for it. But I also wanted to use them as crawlers because I wanted actors rather than, say, dancers or whatever to play the part. I wanted to bring something to the crawlers.
That's because I was brought up in the art of ballet.
I think you just got to have imagination and a bit of an excitement for doing something that's out of the ordinary. And you allow all of the circumstances around you to create the illusion of the character within that.
It's not organic. Because the makeup that they have allows them to express themselves fully, both physically and, you know, facial expressions.
Do your movement with your forehead. It's complete silicon movement.
That's wonderful.
To let yourself go in something like this, you have to trust your body. And although you have to be conscious of what you're doing and choreograph certain things, there just has to be a sense of freedom. I think that's exactly how you can confidently pull off being a beast.
Putting actors in those suits is just, you know, the best of both worlds.
Papa's got a head like a ping pong ball. Papa's got a head like a ping pong ball. Papa's got a head like a ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong ball. Ping, ping pong, ping, 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 king dong.
It's fantastic to play this undercover actor. You know, I can go on, do what I want, and create something which I hope is entertaining and frightening and a bit off the wall, and then I can sit back and know that nobody on this planet is going to go, oh, that's him. He plays that beast. And that's great for me, because I like the kind of anonymity of it all. It's nice.
I'm out of here.
To make up a crawler every day was about a 3.5-hour job. We'd come in, start with the face, and then basically put the contact lenses in.
Can you see all right?
Yeah. No problem.
No.
That's good. Raw.
Teeth in, and then full body paint job, which would take about 2 hours.
In order to apply the makeup and the veins and the prosthetics, we've all had to shave every part of our bodies, which is rather embarrassing.
Oh, not at this time.
Why not?
It's too early. Too early.
Why not? Why?
You come in like out. Yeah, he's a bit sort of.
Is he naked?
Yeah, we're doing his nads and stuff.
Originally, it took about 5 hours to be made up.
So it's 7:10 when I was picked up this morning. It's now... What time is it? It's now 3:25.
But now they've dropped that down to 3.5 hours. So it's somewhere between 3.5 to 4 hours. And then throughout the day, there's constant touch-ups.
Basically, we tried to give them all a distinct personality. There's one that's called Scar, who gets sliced, and he was a real vicious, nasty creature, so we sort of gave him these lip pieces that pulled down his lips, almost like a dog snarling, that he always had that sour face. Females, we gave them a slightly witchy, sour look, while we didn't want any good-looking girl callers, so they're all ugly.
I can still see that it's me. I saw a picture of myself. What? It's different when you're looking in the mirror, but when I saw a picture of myself, I could still see my face.
And the rest of them just had little sort of quirky, different shaped ears. Some looked angrier, some looked a bit dopey. I made a deliberate point of keeping the crawlers away from the girls. I just wanted to see what the effect would be.
Action!
I think I found the way through!
It's been very mysterious. We haven't been allowed to see them at all until the scene.
I was saying to the girls, I said, I feel like I'm actually, making a drama, because we hadn't come across the crawlers and they come into the film quite late.
We knew he was around, sort of on location, and we kind of, some of the girls would kind of be hiding out, seeing if they could kind of catch a glimpse of him.
Well, it was bloody good for me. I got closer to the women than I've ever been before. Didn't quite get my teeth into them, but they did make me drool at the mouth, so to speak. Wonderful.
But I actually think it was a really good idea.
Because it did build up an anticipation and adrenaline.
Good job. Sorry,
You were shoving him in that hole that we're about to go
That was his arse,
Are you
right?
putting him in the hole? Look how hairy. Please don't.
Put who? Hey.
Are you happy to walk?
What do you want to know?
No, I'm going to weep. What's behind the van? There's a crawler outside. Isn't that happy to walk?
Maybe.
There's a car outside.
Did you read your script?
It was me.
You read your script?
They were getting really, really nervous about meeting the crawlers for the first time. They didn't know what to expect. They hadn't seen any pictures. They had no idea what they were going to look like.
I don't think love is going to blossom from this meeting. I can't imagine. It's like your worst blind date ever, isn't it? I mean, imagine if this fucker turned up at your door.
They just scared the living daylight out of me. We were supposed to stand still. I was screaming at the other side of the room within 3 seconds.
They just snapped. They went running off into the dark screaming. They built, for weeks, they'd been building up this image of being these really hard-ass, tough as nails girls. As soon as the crawler shows up, it's hands in the air and running away like a big bunch of pansies.
Oh, fuck it! Hello! Please! Is there anybody there? No,
When you first come out, people go, oh, right, that's interesting. But because it was in the scene, the girls were expecting something and didn't know what to expect. And of course, you arrive and they get a shock, and you kind of get a shock as well. and it was just brilliant. It was fantastic to be hidden away from them, and a lot of fun.
And fighting them. It's a whole nother thing. It was actually really difficult because I was fighting a man. You know, I was like actually wrestling a guy, and that was hard work.
Action. There, that's it, yes. There, good. Okay, hold it there.
And fighting on that sand, it was like glass, just cutting your skin.
So whenever we crawl about on all fours and fight on the floor, everybody's getting lacerated, and it's burning, and it's taking our skin away. Soon we'll all look like crawlers permanently.
I had beautiful skin before I came here. I was almost offered a modelling contract with Clinique. But now look at me. I've gone to wreck and ruin within days.
But at the end, I was sort of like, wow, yeah, you did that, girl. Good on you.
In you come,
Hopefully the audience will find them creepy. That was one thing that I wanted, was that they'd look at them and go, really be creeped out, because they're quite nasty, horrible-looking things. No hair, sinewy, sort of gaunt. Just hopefully to be a bit creeped out by them, basically.
I'm absolutely over the moon with the way that the crawlers have turned out. They're incredibly physical and virile and fierce looking, but and their colouring and everything, and it's all to do with being in the pitch dark. And what's your worst nightmare underground? And meeting these guys is pretty much your worst nightmare.
The worst part of working on this film is, without a doubt, being very cold and very wet and very tired.
Just being cold.
Getting so filthy that you need about 2 showers. Your social life kind of doesn't exist when you're doing this film.
The cold water. Lying in cold water.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
How long it takes to shower all the muck off at the end of the day.
Having to perform scenes with great passion while being freezing cold down to the bone.
Sometimes at the end of the day, you know, you've got tears and blood and all this stuff all over your face, and you kind of just looked in the mirror and you just went, did I do that?
But it's been wicked. So good. Such a love.
I normally don't like shooting very much. It's sort of stressful and busy, and lots of things can go wrong. But it's been a real pleasure working with this bunch of people for the last 7 weeks.
The best part of working on this film has been the people, without a doubt.
Going to Scotland and doing whitewater rafting.
The people, really good fun. I've had such a laugh.
Please stop, please. Okay.
The best thing is to see kind of, you know, a friend making a film and actually being on a set with a lot of people that I know, and seeing everybody giving a lot of effort towards making a good movie.
Every day of the shoot, it's just been a blast. Something's happened, something funny.
How about this?
You know, something spectacular. There's been a great stunt, or you know, just some great dramatic sequence or something like that. Things just falling into place along the way. Start thinking about what I'm going to do next, because I want to be on another film set by Christmas, in an ideal world. Because I can't get enough of it. It's just the best job in the universe, and I've loved every second of it.
Neil's always got some, like, a little twist in what he does, and I think this one just doesn't stop. It's a bit relentless and a bit off the wall, and Neil's just got a magnificent imagination, which I think that's what this film is. It's an exploration of his mind, and I don't want to be in his mind because it's scary.
No, I think that's good enough. Good enough.